Chapter 1. The Origins of Fafnir. Fafnir is one of the most striking figures in Norse mythology, appearing prominently in the Volsunga saga and the poetic Edda. To see him merely as a dragon would be misleading, for Fafnir was not born a monster. He was at first a mighty dwarf. His father, Hreiðmarr, was a wealthy and powerful chieftain skilled in magic and craftsmanship. Fafnir lived alongside his brothers, Regin and Otter, under their father's roof. From an early age, Fafnir distinguished himself from his brothers. He was stronger, fiercer, and more ambitious than either of them. Ancient tales describe him as proud, quick to anger, and driven by an insatiable desire for power. These qualities, admirable in part, would later lead him down a path of tragedy and transformation. The turning point in his life began with misfortune. One day, the gods Odin, Loki, and Hreðmarr were traveling through Midgard and came across Otter, who often took the shape of an otter while fishing. Mistaking him for an ordinary animal, Loki killed him. When the gods brought the otter's body back to Hreiðmarr's hall, the truth was revealed, and the grief-stricken father demanded compensation for the wrongful death of his son. The ransom, or wergild, was immense. The gods were forced to fill and cover Otter's skin with gold and treasure. To pay this debt, Loki seized the hoard of the dwarf Andvari, including his magical ring Andvaranaut. Yet this ring carried a curse, one that would bring ruin to all who possessed it. When the treasure was delivered, Fafnir's eyes were opened to its magnificence. The sight of the gleaming gold and the enchanted ring stirred something dangerous within him. Where others saw a payment of blood price, Fafnir saw the promise of unmatched power and sovereignty. From that moment, his heart clung to the treasure. His greed and ambition began to overshadow his bonds of kinship. Even at this early stage of the saga, we see the first hints of Fafnir's eventual fate. Though still in his dwarven form, his soul was already hardening, curling protectively around the gold that would soon consume him. He was destined not merely to guard treasure but to be transformed by it, becoming the very embodiment of greed and destructive desire in Norse mythology. Chapter 2. The transformation into a dragon and the cursed hoard. The death of Otter and the ransom of treasure set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter Fafnir's fate. Though the gods departed once their debt was paid, the curse of Andvari's hoard remained behind. The wealth was not a gift, it was poison, and Fafnir, already ambitious and proud, became the first victim of its corruption. Hreiðmarr, the father, kept the treasure in his possession, believing it his rightful compensation for the loss of his son. But Fafnir's heart seethed with jealousy and hunger. He no longer saw the gold as blood price but as the key to dominion and eternal might. His desires grew so fierce that they turned him against his own kin. In a fit of greed, Fafnir killed his father, striking him down so that the hoard might belong to him alone. Regin, his surviving brother, dared not oppose him. For Fafnir's strength and fury were unmatched, and now they were sharpened by a terrible obsession. To protect what he had stolen, Fafnir withdrew into the wilderness, far from men and gods alike. There, the curse of the treasure completed its work upon him. His greed twisted not only his soul but also his very form. He shed his dwarven body and became a monstrous dragon, vast and terrible. His scales were as hard as iron, his fangs sharp as spears, and his breath venomous. Yet more fearsome than his physical might was his purpose. He became a guardian of gold, lying upon the hoard in endless vigilance. Coiled upon the glittering mass, Fafnir would let no living creature approach. In this form, Fafnir embodied more than just physical transformation. He became a symbol. The dragon represented the destructive power of greed, a being so consumed by desire for wealth that he abandoned kinship, humanity, and even his own shape. He did not spend his treasure, nor did he enjoy it. Instead, he became a prisoner to it, chained by the very wealth he sought to own. Thus the once proud son of Hreiðmarr was lost, and in his place rose Fafnir the dragon, whose name would echo in legend as the archetype of the horde-guarding serpent. His lair, a desolate wilderness shrouded in fear, stood as a warning to all who sought gold without wisdom or restraint. Chapter 3. Sigurd and the Slaying of Fafnir. The tale of Fafnir cannot be told without the hero who ended his reign of terror. Sigurd, the most celebrated dragon slayer of Norse legend. Known in the Germanic tradition as Siegfried, Sigurd's story intertwines with that of the cursed horde, for fate itself seemed to bind their destinies together. Fafnir's brother Regin had long coveted the treasure but lacked the strength to reclaim it. Filled with resentment, he turned his eyes toward his foster son, Sigurd, whom he had trained in the arts of wisdom and smithing. Regin forged for him a mighty sword, Gram, reforged from the shards of Sigurd's father's broken blade. It was said to cut through an anvil as though it were cloth, a weapon worthy of facing a dragon. Guided by Regin, Sigurd journeyed to Gnitaheiði, the desolate land where Fafnir dwelled. The dragon lay coiled upon his hoard, venom dripping from his fangs, and every living creature fled his presence. Yet Sigurd did not confront him with brute force. Instead, he relied on cunning. Knowing that Fafnir left his lair to drink from a nearby stream, Sigurd dug a trench across the dragon's path and lay hidden within it. When the great serpent slithered above him, vast as a mountain, Sigurd thrust Gram upward with all his might. The blade pierced Fafnir's belly, striking deep into his heart. The beast roared, his death shriek shaking the earth, and the venom of his fury poured forth into the land. But his strength failed him at last, and he fell, mortally wounded by the young hero's hand. As Fafnir lay dying, he spoke to Sigurd, warning him of the cursed nature of the treasure. The gold, he said, would bring death and ruin to whoever possessed it, for its shadow stretched far beyond his own fate. Yet Sigurd, though he heard the words, was undeterred. The curse that had consumed Fafnir now hovered over him, invisible but inescapable. In slaying Fafnir, Sigurd did not simply destroy a monster. He overcame the embodiment of greed and fear that haunted his world. But in claiming the hoard, he also inherited the burden of its curse. Thus, the death of the dragon was not an ending, but the beginning of another tragic cycle in the saga of the Volsungs. Chapter 4. The Legacy of Fafnir. With Fafnir's death, the wilderness grew silent, and the land was freed from the shadow of the dragon. Yet the end of his life did not erase his story. Rather, it gave birth to a legacy that endured through centuries of myth, poetry, and song. Fafnir became more than a slain monster. He became a symbol, a cautionary tale carved deep into the heart of Norse tradition. To the Norse, Fafnir embodied the destructive nature of greed. He had once been a dwarf of great strength and promise, but his lust for treasure twisted him into something monstrous, both in spirit and in flesh. His downfall was not merely a physical defeat at Sigurd's hand, but the inevitable result of his own obsession. In this way, Fafnir's tale served as a warning, that wealth without wisdom is ruin, and that those who clutch too tightly to gold may find themselves consumed by it. But Fafnir's story also transcended his own time. The image of the dragon lying upon its hoard entered the imagination of Europe and beyond, becoming an enduring archetype. From medieval tales of treasure-guarding dwarves to modern fantasy literature, echoes of Fafnir resound. J.R.R. Tolkien's Smaug in The Hobbit, for example, is a direct heir to this myth, coiled possessively upon his gold, suspicious of all who draw near. Moreover, Fafnir's death at the hands of Sigurd elevated the hero to everlasting fame. The dragon slayer became a figure of courage and cunning, while Fafnir remained the shadow against which such heroism shone. Yet even in defeat, the dragon's warning endured. The curse of the gold did not vanish with his last breath. The treasure went on to sow strife, betrayal, and death in the lives of those who claimed it, proving that Fafnir's words in his final moments were no idle threat. Thus, Fafnir's tale is not only about a beast and a hero but about the eternal struggle between desire and wisdom, between the hunger for power and the cost of surrendering to it. In the end, the dragon's legacy is not his gold, nor even his defeat, but the lesson he embodies: that greed can transform even the strongest into monsters, and that no treasure is worth the price of one's soul.